What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Boogie in Nature. Today we're going to be talking about camp cooking. And what I mean by camp cooking, I'm talking about stoves. Everyone has their different opinion on what is the best type of stove to use, and we're going to jump right into the pros and cons to all, or at least the four that I am going to be talking about. The first stove that I'm going to be talking about, which is a very popular one, is an alcohol stove. This is a homemade alcohol stove. Some people make it out of cat food cans. This one was made out of Coke cans. Um, but it works the same way. You put your fuel in the center here, and I have little holes poked into it. And these turn into like little burners once the fuel heats up, and it just cooks it like a eye of a stove, and it works really well. Pros: it cooks well. Depending on your fuel that you use, different your different alcohols or the heat that you would get out of the automotive store that you would put into your fuel into your your car to give like an octane boost and to stop it from freezing, that burns the hottest. Okay, it's not the cleanest, but it burns the hottest. Then you have the different types of alcohols and in whiskey or corn hooch, moonshine, granular alcohol. That burns. Granular alcohol burns okay, and so on and so forth. The con to it is, depending on how long your trip is, you have to carry all the fuel with you. In liquid is heavy. So that's the con to that's the one pro and the one con. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people that have more pros and cons to them, but that's like the biggest thing. The fuel, in my opinion, does not equal or reward with this stove. Next up is my favorite stove to carry. I made it myself as well. This is a Hobo stove. It is just a wood burning stove that I made out of a can. Um, it works really, really well, and is lightweight. It's easy to carry. It's easy to use. The cons, um, one, you have to search for fuel, which isn't a big deal because it runs off of little small twigs. You don't need large pieces of wood to go in this to do anything. I mean, if you have a good knife and you have a decent size piece of wood, you could whittle it down, and you can keep feeding it with that. So I mean, it will go as long as you have fuel in it. That's another pro slash con as long as the your fuel that you're trying to use isn't wet. Another con is, of course, it's a little, as you can see on my fingers, that because I hadn't cleaned it, it's a little dirty. So, but it's still a fun one to use, and you get a nice blaze in here, and it heats water up, and you can have you a little skillet or whatnot on it, and this thing works really, really, really well. I love this thing. I love this thing. Moving on, the gas stove. Pay no attention to the actual burner on top because this is just a cheap knockoff of a pocket rocket. This is that Chinese version that has the piezo lighter on it, and it works. I mean, pros to it: it heats water up fast. This one you can actually adjust to a simmer. I'm not sure how the pocket rockets work, but this particular one, you could actually let water simmer on it. You can let your food simmer on it. Though it has this one burner that shoots up in a fine point, you can kind of end up with hot spots because it doesn't have the dispersion. Um, that's the pro leading into the con. It's a burner, so even though it has a simmer, it's a little difficult to work with a simmer at times. Uh, Another con, the cans on this can be a little heavy depending on how far you have to go and how much you have to cook. You know, I've heard people tell the story of, and I'm saying tell the story because I don't know them personally, and I don't know anyone who has done it yet. So I'm saying they told the story of they did a through hike and they were out there for months on end and they only had to use one can. I can slightly believe it, even though I haven't used mine as much as they've used theirs, but I've had that can for about 2 years now, because I don't use it that much. So I've had this can for about 2 years. Moving into my ultimate favorite at this time, this Esbit stove. This Esbit stove, this was introduced to my set this season, and I swear I don't know what I did without it and how I lived without it. The ease of use, the packability, the size. Although breaking this gas stove down, the gas stove works the same. I mean, it's heavier though, it's a pound heavier. It's a little bit over a pound heavier if I go with that route versus that route. It's just so much lighter. It's so much lighter. My cook set, my stove and fuel, it's all in here, and I mean, this whole thing now just weighs a pound versus a pound and a half. And that is a big difference in, you know, when it comes down to ounces to pounds to pain. I want to thank. What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining me for this episode. Like, subscribe. I hope you learned something. I hope you guys keep coming back. I hope you had as much fun watching this as I love doing it. Just keep coming back. We're gonna be everywhere.